What's up everyone, Coach Tony from Bonvex Strength, and today I'm going to answer a common question that we get, and that's, do I have to train to failure to build muscle? Now, hard work is unavoidable. In order to get what you want out of training, you have to train hard. But the magical question is, how hard do I have to train? And we really try to teach our lifters how to gauge their own level of training intensity using RPE, rate of perceived exertion, and RIR, reps in reserve. And what research tells us, and kind of in combination of what we've seen through practical experience, is that you don't have to train to failure to get stronger and to gain muscle. However, you do have to train hard. And the general recommendation that we make is somewhere between 1 and 3 reps left in the tank. So if we're talking about reps in reserve, RIR, 1 to 3 RIR seems to be kind of this sweet spot where if most of your training, you take your sets 1 to 3 reps away from failure, that's probably gonna be training hard enough to make the adaptation that you wanna make. And in this specific instance, that's gaining muscle. So reps in reserve is really a really useful tool. And the thing is, all RIR is kind of, the baseline is muscular failure. So at some point, I think it is important to train to failure, to use AMRAP sets, as many reps as possible, just so you really understand what it means to actually go to failure. And the stronger you get, the more you can kind of wreck yourself by going to failure too much. And so that's why it's important, I think, to learn early on to what your actual 0 RIR, what your AMRAP feels like, so you can spend the rest of your training kind of in that 1 to 3 reps in reserve range. So usually what we'll do with our beginners is we'll use kind of low-hanging fruit exercises, like low-risk exercises to do AMRAP sets, things like push-ups, things like leg curls, like some of those more like single joint exercises. So you can push yourself really, really hard and feel what that high intensity effort feels like, but there's no risk of technique going out the window like it would with a big lift. The injury risk is very, very low because if you have to bail on an exercise like that, it's very, very easy to go to failure on a push-up without any sort of consequences, unlike the bench press or the squat or the deadlift, something like that. So remember, with any adaptation you're trying to make, progressive overload is very, very important. So doing more than what you've done before, adding weight to the bar, doing more reps, doing more working sets. And if you leave reps in the tank each time, it's easier to build upon that via progressive overload. Whereas if you're always going to failure all the time, it's hard to sustain that progress. You might burn out a little more quickly. And that's why I think that people who are advocates of single set to failure training, that kind of high intensity training, there's really very limited ways to create progressive overload. Whereas if you leave more reps in the tank, your ability to create that progressive overload is a little bit more broad because there's always a little bit left in the tank, allowing you to draw out that progression over a longer period of time. So the simple answer is no, you don't have to train to failure, but you do have to train hard. In order to understand how to train hard, you have to kind of flirt with failure every once in a while. So you have to kind of get there to know how to stay away from there. So if you haven't experienced it before, find ways in your training to sneak in some sets to failure, some AMRAP sets, so you can use that as the baseline for the rest of your somewhat submaximal training.